First of all, yesterday we talked about this topic for a very long time. As I understand it, both he and I see this as not the final version yet. And you could say, if I may put it that way, it's an unofficial version. When it is delivered to the Russians through official channels, then we can talk about some specific things. But today I said that the plan is workable. And Vladimir Vladimirovich acknowledges that this is a good basis for negotiations. But I used to be a deputy once. I read all of this yesterday. Vladimir Vladimirovich presented it to me. This is the first version, and the second version is when the plan was broken down into parts. I want to say right away that let the Trump team not take offense, but it was put together in a hurry. I don't want to say it was done completely on its knees, but it was rushed. It needs to be presented in a more digestible form. It needs to be presented, I said, Vladimir Vladimirovich, without broad interpretations, so that everything is specific. But if there are any territorial issues being resolved, then everything must be spelled out down to the meters, kilometers, which troops, where the troops are, who should be there, who shouldn't, and so on and so forth. Everything must be spelled out down to the smallest detail. A broad interpretation will later allow, at some point, everyone to interpret certain points in their own way. That's why absolutely everything must be specific. Well, I don't want to go into details. It's probably not the right time for that now. The Americans are working on this. A tremendous amount of work has been done, but I want to draw your attention to something, especially you journalists, because as I follow the statements of Russian and Belarusian journalists and experts, I want to say, they often say, the Americans have conceded to Russia's demands. They met there in Anchorage in Alaska, conceded to the demands, but Ukraine's demands are not being taken into account. That's what the Europeans are saying. Have you heard this common opinion? I have to say in this regard that the Americans met with Putin in Anchorage, in Alaska, but how many times have they met with the Ukrainians and Trump himself with Zelensky, with the Europeans? Do you really think they just had tea together? Or that what you saw at the negotiating table in the official footage was all there was? No, Trump and his team worked substantively, as you say, and thoroughly, in depth. As for the shortcomings, I've already given my opinion, but they did a tremendous amount of work. With the Ukrainians, with the Europeans, and with the Russians. And in this regard, Trump deserves credit. So to say that they only met with the Russians, that they somehow catered to the Russians, listened to Russia's opinion and position, but not Ukraine's, that's not true. That's incorrect. The issue is something else. The issue is that Russia turned out to be more willing to negotiate than Ukraine. That has to be acknowledged. Well, and then you can dig deeper into it. If we're going to speak plainly, I often criticize Volodymyr Zelensky, but I won't criticize him now. At the beginning of the war, I once advised him on what to do. If he had done that back then, none of these questions would have arisen at all. 28 or however many questions there are. The situation would have been completely different. And if Ukraine had fulfilled the Minsk agreements, there would have been no war. And Ukraine would have its borders as they want from 1991. But if Volodymyr Zelensky, who is the president of Ukraine, wants to take a closer and more realistic look at the current situation now, especially considering that he was correct in his judgments and actions back then, I do not feel that I am in a position to offer him any advice or guidance at this time. He might know the situation better than I do. I just want to say what I see. If you want Ukraine to remain within the borders it has today, taking into account the realities on the front, you need to negotiate. Don't sabotage the negotiation process. If there's something you can't agree on somewhere, and from this proposal, I didn't see anything that couldn't be agreed upon on some issues, but if suddenly, say, there's some demilitarized zone, some pieces and so on, Donbass, well, leave that for later. But stop the war where it's not your children dying, but other people's children. That's the main problem with Zelensky, too. Other people are dying. That's something you need to keep in mind. And most importantly, you'll lose your country. Well, if it's true what they say, that you've bought something somewhere before or something else, of course you'll find a place to live. Your life, your children, Lena, your wife, and so on, you'll even find a place for your parents. But what will Ukrainians do, millions of people? So think about how to preserve what you have based on the real situation. And you have everything. You have access to the sea, Odessa is yours, and Mykolaiv. But all of that could be gone in an instant, in a single moment. That's why you need to weigh everything and make a well-considered decision. And Trump is right here when he puts pressure on both sides. But roughly speaking, if it was possible to come to an agreement with Russia by pressuring it, you can't do that with Ukraine. And here the European Union plays a negative role. This war needs to be stopped. I'm afraid there won't be a winner in this war. It's like a catastrophe. You know why there won't be one if it comes to that. But if there is a winner, it won't be the European Union if America, the United States, abandons them. Well, that's what I can say spontaneously and without preparation about this, for now. But we'll think more about these questions. There's a lot of work ahead, hard work. There's a lot to do there. There's the Zaporizhzhia plant and Russia's gold and foreign currency reserves. Everything is taken into account there, not without interest from the United States of America. That's where Trump's touch is present. As an economist,
do you believe that the crisis in Ukraine is close to ending?
I believe it now more than ever. But again, we discussed this question just yesterday. Here, you can't, be complacent or revel in this process. This is war. And at any moment, even as we're talking right now, some unforeseen situation could arise that could completely turn the situation around. That's why war is war. It's a very critical moment in the life of any society and country. That's why you can't let your guard down. Both sides need to stay alert at all times. But these proposals, which have been recognized and accepted, mainly accepted by President Putin and President Trump and his team, also put them forward. I think the Europeans will understand that this is the way to go, and so will the Ukrainians. What do the Europeans have to lose? The proposal is for a 600,000 strong army. The Europeans want 800,000. Come on, 600,000 is already a lot to maintain an army. Take Poland, for example. They're economically stronger now, and their army is 200,000. Well, they want more over there. 200. 800,000. Can you imagine? Russia's army is almost that size. And Russia is huge. But that's how it is. They latch on to anything they can. So the issue isn't really about the content of this peace treaty draft from the Europeans' perspective. The point is, they don't want this peace. They just don't understand why they need this war. They haven't won it. They say the British are playing a rather unscrupulous role there and have taken a certain stance. I think they remember.
How do you assess the ongoing bilateral diplomatic relations between
Kyrgyzstan and Belarus? We have excellent relations with Kyrgyzstan and Belarus. I won't list our trade turnover or what we buy and sell. The most important thing is I want to highlight two main points. First, we have preserved everything that existed between us back in Soviet times. Well, you remember, we even used to buy beet seeds from you for small things. We used to buy seeds from you and bring them over because for us, we couldn't get them ourselves. The seeds wouldn't grow for us. The weather just wasn't right. We even managed to preserve that, not to mention supplying our machinery and so on here. In the last year or two, you've become significantly wealthier. I've noticed you're building a lot of things. Well done. For well-known reasons. We, together with the Russians, have come under sanctions. Kyrgyzstan, well done. They took advantage of this and they did the right thing. And secondly, just so you understand the nature of our relationship, the Ukrainians started destroying infrastructure facilities on Russian territory. First and foremost, oil refineries. You ran out of fuel. Of course, according to our obligations, we supply a lot to the Russians. We have two powerful plants. But the Kyrgyz asked for help, and we had to help. There was no fuel, and tomorrow you wouldn't even have anything to drive your cars with. We responded, reached an agreement with Vladimir Vladimirovich, took a small share from the Russians, and are cooperating with you. We have very close, friendly relations with Kyrgyzstan. One more question, and Bakiev is also living well, he's fine. We won't let him go back to you anymore. I told him, no more trips, that's enough. live in Belarus. He's living well here. Sometimes I visit him as a guest when I invite him over. So we won't give him back to you. So he...
Is doing well.
Yes, but he suffers a lot and misses his country. He always tells me he wishes he could at least visit his father's grave. But it's outrageous that the Kyrgyz can't allow their former president to visit his father's grave. I think we'll resolve this issue with the current leadership.